The story of Methodism begins in England in the 1700s with a family called the Wesleys. Samuel the father was a pastor in the Church of England. He loved poetry, but he was terrible at math. Now, Samuel had trouble keeping track of money, and he sometimes didn't even seem to know how many children he had. Susanna, the mother, was a remarkable woman. If she gave birth to 18 or 19 children, we would know how many if Samuel had been better at record keeping and at math. And both Samuel and Susanna valued faith and education, and they passed those values on to their children. They made time for family worship every day, and Susanna made sure that each of her children, even her daughters, learned how to read at an early age. Two of the Wesley children, John and Charles, went away to study at Oxford University. They found that life at Oxford was very different than the warm and spiritual home that they were used to. Not only were most of the students not interested in religious faith, but they mocked and made fun of anyone who seemed to be too spiritual or too religious. John and Charles realized that if they didn't find some kind of a community, some sort of spiritual support, then they were going to drift away from God. They found a small group of students who were also interested in keeping the faith, and they started meeting on a regular basis. The members of this holy club would gather to study the Bible and to pray for one another. But they really started attracting attention when they asked the question, what would happen if we actually did the things that Jesus taught us to do? What would happen if we started feeding the hungry and visiting with those who are sick and in prison? These young students got into a sort of a rhythm. One day they would visit the orphanage, another day they would visit the prison, another day they would visit the hospital, another day they would visit the poorhouse. All of this religious activity brought these young men to the attention of the other students. The other students started making fun of them and calling them names. One of the nicknames that they were given was the Bible Moths. Another nickname that these young men in the Holy Club were given was Methodist. A Methodist was intended to be an insult. The idea was that these young men were boring and they didn't have any imagination, and they just kept doing the same things over and over and over, hoping that somehow by repetition these things would cause them to grow in their faith and to grow closer to God. Well, when the Wesleys, John and Charles, heard that name Methodist, they embraced it. What was intended as an insult became the idea behind their movement. They said, yes, this is exactly who we are. We are the people who do the things that Jesus taught us over and over again, believing that these methods of the Christian faith will somehow shape our souls. Well, from the time of the Wesleys on down to today, the nickname stuck. Still to this day, when Methodists are at our best, our Methodism is not about loyalty to a brand or a denomination. The best kind of Methodism is the Methodism that is all about following in the way of Jesus, doing the things he taught us to do. That includes works of piety and devotion, like reading the Bible and worshiping together and spending time in prayer. And it also includes works of mercy and justice, like feeding the hungry and caring for those who are sick and in prison. Methodists are those people who ask the question, what is it that causes me to grow deeper and deeper in love with God and with my neighbors? And how can I find room in my life to do more and more of those things?